This story is about our protagonist, Roland, a human known as the world's strongest swordsman. He was the first in history, since the demon emergence, to have defeated one of the Demon King's executives, so people thought he'd be the savior of humanity, to free them from the torment of the Demon King, or so they thought. What Roland never expected was that the Demon King would take revenge on him by turning his newly wedded wife into a demon. And so Roland was forced to kill his wife, who is now a mindless demon. But in the process, he lost an arm. It was, of course, severed by the Demon King himself in order to weaken him, torment him, and absorb his rage. Well, the two, husband and wife, ended up dying together after a fierce battle, and their corpses were left to rot on the ground. But an angel had other plans for him. He was revived by that angel in order to defeat the Demon King. Though there was one missing factor, his hand was replaced with the hand of a demon, practically the hand of his wife who was transformed into a demon. Now he is neither a demon nor a human, with the goal of defeating the Demon King while being criticized and chased down by the humans he once protected. If you like this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. You'll definitely like it, so subscribe for more. Now, the story begins as the Purgatory General Maladgo, an executive of the Demon King's army, was defeated by a mere human, our protagonist, Roland. Of course, the battle was fierce. The outside was in ruins. Maladgo couldn't believe he would be defeated by a mere human. Furious, he charged out angrily, not wanting such a thing to happen. But our protagonist used a calm yet swift sword technique and diced Maladgo into multiple parts. Even the demons in hell wouldn't recognize him. Just so you guys know, in this world, a single demon lord descended. The demon lord destroyed towns, destroyed kingdoms, and massacred countless humans, and then he devoured their emotions of despair. As the invasion advanced, the demon lord placed his officers throughout the lands to rule. And so, 100 years have passed since the demon lord's descent. Although humanity continues to resist the demons, they could not defeat the executives, let alone the demon lord himself, until a certain warrior appeared in the village of Okuna, on the outskirts of the Gringold Kingdom, our protagonist, Roland. People in the village were excited to see him since he was the first to have defeated one of the Demon King's executives after fighting for 3 days and 3 nights straight. Roland thanked them for their kind words. But then a girl arrived. Immediately as he saw her, a smile filled his face. The girl is Roland's childhood friend, Felicia. She welcomed him back, saying she knew he'd be all right. Seeing the two of them, the villagers decided to leave them both alone. She asked him if it was okay for him to come back from the royal capital so soon. He's the first hero in the world to ever defeat one of the Demon Lord's executives, which is something worth celebrating for an entire month. With a smile, he told her that if he stayed there any longer, they'd just start telling him again to join the kingdom's knights. He had no intention of leaving the village. She told him that it's quite shocking to see the greatest swordsman in the world living in a remote countryside. He smiled, saying that's why he left Solana and came back home. She chuckled, telling him not to dare trouble his little sister. At that moment, Roland recalled something. Solana telling him not to trouble his big sister either, that he shouldn't keep making his sister worry until he saves the world. So now is the perfect time for him to propose. She'll handle things on her side just fine. So instead, he should show her he's a man. Roland summoned his confidence and told Felicia there's a gift he wants to give her. She was surprised to see he'd be giving her a present since he's not really good at those kinds of things. She then asked what he was giving her. Immediately, to her surprise, he went on his knees with a box in his hand. A wedding ring, indeed. He then said to her, "Will you marry me? In a time like this, when no one knows what tomorrow will bring. Even defeating an officer doesn't mean peace is anywhere close. But still, I want to protect you." Of course, she accepted the proposal. Those tears were nothing like the fake tears of the girls in this generation. Finally, they both married. The two of them lost their parents when they were young, and they've supported each other ever since. In this world overrun by demons, Felicia, who never loses her smile, is loved by everyone and brings hope to all. Our protagonist deemed her to be far too good for him, someone like him whose only skill is the sword. So at the very least, he swore that he would protect her no matter what. And so he continued his training as usual, swinging his sword relentlessly, while his wife watched him from the tree. She told him he could at least take the night off. He refused, saying tonight is the night. He has to make absolutely sure he can protect their happiness. She was touched by his words, So she called out to him and asked if he would promise her just one thing, that he would live longer than her, because she knows he'd probably throw away his life just to protect her. And since she believes he can make this world peaceful, she can live in peace in this cruel world. But a world without him is something she can't endure. With a smile, he told her all right, he's not planning on dying either, because if he dies, who will protect her? He told her not to worry, he'll be fine. For that, he needs to train harder. It'll take a little longer, so she should go to bed first. Blushing, she asked him if he really meant she should go to bed. Is he serious? They're a married couple starting today, so they should sleep together. Hearing this, he blushed. He corrected what he said earlier by telling her he'd be with her right away, so she should please wait a bit. She then left, blushing, as tonight would be their first night in bed together, enjoying each other's embrace with no care in the world. But then, Roland felt an ominous presence. The pressure from that presence was terrifying. Someone then spoke to him from behind. He told Roland that he had finally found him, the one who defeated Maladgo. Roland was surprised to see a demon, but the malevolent pressure coming from him clearly surpassed a demon executive. He grabbed his sword tightly, wanting to cut him down at once, so he jumped forward to attack. But to his surprise, the man sent him flying back down with just a gesture of his finger, intense pressure pressing on him, the ground shattering from the force. The man praised his strength, saying he now understood why Maladgo was defeated. But it's all the more reason he can't let him run free since it concerns his dignity as the Demon Lord. Roland was shocked to see he was the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord told him that an executive hadn't been slain in 100 years after all, so he came personally to kill him, but he changed his mind. He lifted the spell. The Demon Lord then asked him if he knew that their goal is not the death of humans, but the emotion called despair. He then performed a spell, telling Roland that it's an ancient curse that turns anyone it touches into a monster. The Demon King grinned, then threw the spell toward the village, to the path where Felicia was walking. With a grin on his face, the Demon King told the shocked Roland to hurry and go. Soon, what is precious to him will be eaten away. Shocked, Roland ran at full speed to save Felicia. He gritted his teeth worriedly, hoping Felicia would stay safe since he swore to protect her. But before he could get to her, Felicia turned around with tears on her face and told him not to forget the promise he made. And so, she turned into a demon. At that moment, Roland's mental world collapsed. The girl he loved had now become a demon, just a day after their wedding. Furious, he screamed her name in pain. She faced him in her transformed state and attacked him with her hand. Roland snapped back to his senses and immediately drew out his sword to block her attack. The force was intense. The impact pushed him some distance away. He shouted, calling her name, asking if she can hear his voice. It's okay even if her form has changed since he's her husband. But to his surprise, she attacked him again, and he leapt backward to dodge. He realized she has lost her sense of self. If that's the case, he decided to keep evading her attacks and protect her once her stamina runs out. He shouted for her not to worry. They're going to be happy from now on. There must be a way to break the curse. Until it happens, he won't let anyone hurt her. The girl then struck at him with full force, the impact evident. But Roland came out unscathed. He climbed her hand, telling her he'd protect her for the rest of his life. The girl swung her hand to push him away, and he dodged by leaping backward. The Demon King told Roland that such is expected of the world's strongest swordsman. It's quite impressive for him to have endured the attack without harming the opponent. With a mocking tone, he asked Roland if he really believes they can lift the monster transformation. Roland shouted at him to shut up. Once he quiets Felicia down, he'll kill him right away. She charged at him again, her monstrous mouth wide, ready to taste his lovely flesh. The Demon King grinned, performing a smile, and said to himself that things won't resolve like this. If it's Roland, it might be possible to protect his wife and end the situation. If that was to happen, he won't get to see despair. Multiple magic circles surrounded Roland, then chains came from them and tangled him. He was surprised to see his body couldn't move. That was when it happened. The girl approached him and struck at him. His sword flew into the air and pierced the ground, his hand cut off. With blood dripping down his arm, he went to grab his sword. The Demon King laughed as he now deemed the situation to be getting interesting. Roland was in quite the pain from his severed hand, his vision blurry as he's losing so much blood. In his condition, he can't deflect Felicia's attacks anymore. She struck at him, his sword now in his left hand, taking a defensive stance. Then, bang, the punch sent him flying, slamming him to the wall. Weak, his vision blurry, blood dripping down his face. He wondered if he's going to die since his vision was fading. He almost gave up, but he recalled their promise. His eyes widened as he didn't want her to be left alone in this world as per their promise. Though he knows he'd still die and won't be able to protect her anymore, he decided to keep his promise by not letting her stay alone in this world. He then charged out with his sword. Now ready to take her down for good, he used his sword and pierced it into her chest at an incredible speed, but he wasn't able to cut her in half as he intended. The cut was too shallow. She groaned in pain, then used her hand to pierce through his chest. He coughed out blood, her hand passing through his stomach, but he was still holding his sword. To her surprise, he used his teeth to grab the edge of his sword. He clenched tightly, blood dripping down his mouth. He took a proper position with his last strength, held his sword tightly, and cut her in half with all his strength. The Demon King laughed, telling Roland that even though she was once his wife when she turned into a monster, he cut her clean in half, such as expected of the world's greatest swordsman. Roland pointed at the Demon King, calling him a fool. He will be the next to die. The Demon King grinned and said to Roland that it seems like he made his resolve a little too late. His life ends here. But then, of course, protagonists don't die. There would always be plot armor, and this guy's own was massive. Roland woke up in a vast white empty space after he thought he was dead. He thought it was the afterlife. He said to himself that Felicia's last words were "keep your promise." In other words, she told him to live on, even if it means killing her. But he ended up dying soon after anyway. In this situation, he wondered if he can really keep their promise. She deserved more, a happier life. But then, an angel appeared and told him Felicia was happy. She introduced herself as the angel Myosotis. Surprised, he asked who she is. She replied, saying she would like to speak with him more, but there's no time. However, she will tell him just one thing before the main matter. Felicia was happy. Though she cannot say the reason, she can tell. Roland, with a saddened expression, told the angel she's a kind person, but she refused, saying she's not a kind person considering what she's about to ask him. Confident, she told him she can bring him back to life. In exchange, she needs him to defeat the Demon King. For the sake of this world, they cannot allow him to run free. It will surely be a painful journey, filled with revenge and despair. Even so, she asked if he's willing to fight once more. He told her there's nothing he wants more if he can revive and defeat the Demon King. That bastard, he will be the one to kill him. The angel accepted his resolve and performed a spell. Then suddenly, the white space collapsed, his body visible on the ground. She told him that when he saves the world, his own desires will likely be granted as well. However, she would like to apologize for one thing. Rain began falling. He opened his eyes. She then told him that even she is unable to heal his right arm, so he'll lose his world-class swordsmanship. In its place, she'd given him a new arm. Roland stood up and saw that his hand has now become that of Felicia's. Now he'd have to fight with it. He held her corpse tightly, crying, screaming out in pain. Sometime later, under the rain, Roland buried his wife's upper body. He stood in front of the grave, looking at their marriage ring on his hand, and then wore it in the form of a necklace. He apologized to his wife for fighting with her arm, asking her to please forgive him. But then, monsters came to attack him. He was surprised to see them, but what was most shocking were their clothes. That's when he realized that the people of the village had all turned into monsters. He picked up his sword, not wanting to die in such a place, so he had no choice but to cut down the people he once knew. But as he held the sword, he suddenly felt a sharp striking pain in his hand. The sword fell down. He couldn't get a grip on it. He recalled the angel telling him that she could not heal his right arm and that his world-class swordsmanship would be lost. Though he had no idea what she meant by that, there was no time to think. The monsters wouldn't give him the chance. And now, he had no choice but to fight barehanded. He clenched his fist and then punched a monster at incredible speed, killing it in an instant. He himself was surprised. He had no idea what just happened. He wondered what this overwhelming power coming from his right arm was. Another monster attacked, but he grabbed its mouth and crushed it to death. He couldn't believe such absurdity. His right hand held so much violent power that it was beyond the laws of humanity. Then he heard a scream from behind. It was someone he knew, and who knew him. The man was shocked to see that Roland had become a monster. He ran in fear, shouting that Roland had turned into a monster. Roland tried to explain, but the man wasn't in his right mind to listen, so he didn't chase further. That was when he realized he couldn't stay where humans were anymore. And so, after the fires in the village died down, rumors began to spread about the story of Okuna village. People talked about how half of the villagers turned into monsters and killed the other half. Even Roland, supposedly, had become a monster. Solana, Roland and Felicia's sibling, was drinking in a pub while listening to the rumors. People were surprised to hear that Roland had turned into a monster despite having defeated a demon executive. As a result, they deduced that this was the reason the demon targeted him. And so, the current situation is that the kingdom is mobilizing to subjugate the monster Roland. Also, a request for cooperation will come to their guild as well. Someone commented that it's a waste the former hero is now a target of subjugation. Solana left the guild after finishing her drink and paying the bill, determined to go look for her big brother. Now, in the Gringold Kingdom's Dendron wasteland, Roland was practicing and getting used to his right arm. In the desolate wasteland far from human settlements, a few days had passed as he continued his training to fight with his new arm. Though the sensation was almost the same as moving his original arm, the sword was the one thing he absolutely couldn't grip. It was as if his wife's hand didn't want to touch the sword that killed her. Well, in any case, he deemed his priority now was to become capable of fighting with his new arm, because compared to his swordsmanship, his hand-to-hand combat was vastly inferior. In order to defeat the Demon Lord, he still needed much more power. But then, suddenly, someone attacked him from behind. It was Solana. He was surprised to see her, so he asked why she was there. She told him it was surprising he could still speak the human language. She clenched her fist, activated her aura, and tried to stop Roland. Roland worriedly told her to wait. He hadn't become a monster. She refused, telling him to stop lying. If he were really her big brother, then he wouldn't have left her older sister behind. Going back to the past, Roland, Felicia, and Serana buried their parents. At that time, Serana was crying over the deaths of her parents. Felicia was the one who consoled her, telling her that from now on, she would take the place of their mother. And as for their father, Roland decided to take up that role. And so, the three became a close family. They truly believed the three of them would stay together forever. Back then, Serana was genuinely happy. Now she's seriously attacking that brother of hers. Roland didn't attack back. He was just defending her strikes with his hand. She continued sending a barrage of attacks. Little did they know that a monster was observing them from above the cliff. She didn't stop her punches, but no matter what she did or how fast her strikes seemed to be, Roland dodged and blocked them all. She then used her skill, Twin Palm Strike. The force pushed Roland a few distances away. She became pissed at how stubborn Roland was, saying she just wanted to free her brother as soon as possible. Roland shouted at her to stop, saying his arm may look like this, but he's not a monster. If that's the case, she asked him, then why? Why isn't our sister here anymore? What about the grave back home? She cried and charged out, saying, if you're not a monster, then why did things end up like this? Roland said to her that she should have also seen it. She should know the reason why. She refused to believe him, saying monsters trick people with words. You're the one who told me I could call you brother, so I won't let your body suffer any longer. She activated the artifact on her hand, then swiftly charged forward at high speed, ready to punch Roland. She activated her skill Exploding Rock Fist and punched at him. Rock spikes pierced from the ground, attacking that area. Dust filled the air. She looked around, wondering where Roland was. Roland stealthily appeared behind her at the top of one of the spikes. He said to himself that Serana was completely heartbroken. Even if he tried to explain, she wouldn't listen. He couldn't really blame her. She suddenly lost her sister, and now the brother she admired looks like a monster. He paused, his expression saddened. Maybe it isn't just a misunderstanding. Still, he wondered how he could make her see the truth. Though it's true he didn't kill Felicia. Expecting her to accept it was unrealistic from the start. Perhaps he should slip away quietly without another word. But then, to his surprise, he saw a terrifying monster behind her, ready to strike and gnaw at that soft flesh. He shouted at her to watch out, but before she could react, the monster struck her, sending her flying and slamming into the wall. She fell to the ground and coughed out blood. The monster then approached her, ready to go for the final strike, but Roland appeared swiftly, grabbed the monster by the chest, and slammed it to the ground. The monster groaned as Roland stood over it. With a domineering tone and strong killing intent, he said to the monster, "You still keep taking everything from me, don't you? my peaceful life, the woman I loved most, my right arm. And now, even Sarana. He raised his hand. It increased in size, the power in it enormous. He vowed to destroy every last one of the monsters, including the demons and the Demon King. Then bang! He punched the monster, turning it to paste, leaving only blood behind. But then something happened. When he gripped his arm, something surged into him. His arm swelled enormous, so he wondered if he had just absorbed the monster's strength. That's when he realized what the arm could do. But it was nothing like gentle Felicia. It was a power that takes. A few hours later, night reached. The two sat opposite each other, fire in between them. Sarana was shocked to hear that the Demon King had revealed himself, and that her sister was turned into a monster. Roland, saddened, told her he failed to protect Felicia. He blamed himself for her death. Sarana apologized for not knowing how much he must have suffered. Roland told her it's okay. None of it is her fault. The one to blame is him, for failing to keep Felicia safe, all because of the wretched Demon Lord. Now that he had fallen after losing his sword and right arm, there was no place left for him among humans. So he told her he'd hunt the Demon Lord across the world and kill him with his own hands if he must. Seeing her brother's determination, she told him she'd fight alongside him. She grabbed his hand, saying they're family, so he mustn't carry the burden alone since Felicia was also her sister. Roland couldn't refuse her since Felicia was also taken from her, so the vengeance wasn't only his to bear. The next day, with a smile on her face, she told him it's a new dawn and everything is ready, they can depart any time. But she had no idea how they could track down the Demon Lord, since the Demon Lord doesn't appear in any single land. He appears without warning. And wherever he appears, ruin follows, so sightings never cluster. Roland told her that although the Demon King is hard to locate, he appeared when he slew one of his executives, Maladgo, so they'll keep taking down his executives until every last demon is gone. She thought about it, told him she understood and now knew where to start. Among recent bounties, one offered an especially large reward. There's another target beside him, her brother. The bounty is on the 7 spirits of Maladgo. She continued, saying rumor has it that a fiery phantom appeared in Maladgo's castle, the very fortress he seized. If the rumor is true, that should be their first mark. Roland agreed, telling her they should go hunt Maladgo's ghost. Forming a party with Sarana, they headed north, passing through the Dendron wastelands to the forest region. They headed toward Maladgo's castle. The kingdom had issued a writ declaring Roland to be eliminated. He wrapped a bandage around his arm and hid his face as they traveled along less frequented roads. As they walked, Sarana told him that it feels like it's been a long time since they started traveling together. When she was starting out, they often took on extermination requests. Roland replied, "That's right. It's been 2 years since we were in the same party." He thought to himself that the requests he had been taking recently were either royal decrees with predetermined formations, or dangerously high to risk missions with extremely low survival rates. Though Sarana is an excellent martial artist, he couldn't bring her along for either mission. She told him that she has gotten stronger compared to back then. If it's just the two of them, she's sure they won't lose to anyone. Roland didn't reply to her words. His expression darkened. He said to himself that even though he continued to hone his swordsmanship, which was called the best in the world, even so, he couldn't even scratch the Demon Lord. Sarana then cheerfully told him not to worry. Since the angelic person he met said that his wish will be granted, then there must be a way to bring his sister back to life. Until then, they'll join forces. It's definitely better to think of it that way. Roland looked at her. Seeing the dark look on her face, he knew that Sarana was trying her best to act cheerful, just like Felicia did when they lost their parents. He smiled, since she is similar to Felicia. He told her that's a good idea, he'll choose to think of it that way. As they walked, he said to himself that he couldn't protect Felicia and lost his arm. He thought he couldn't face anyone, but he's glad he got to see Sarana. He swore to fight with his arm and protect Sarana. After some days of walking, they finally arrived at Maladgo's castle. It felt like a fiery place. As they looked up, she asked him if anything had changed since he had come here before. He replied no, nothing had changed from when he defeated him. But the fact that the fire on the throne was still burning meant Maladgo was alive. Roland looked around worriedly, saying he must be somewhere. He told Sarana not to let her guard down. But then, to their surprise, they heard a voice from the shadows telling them that Lord Maladgo is not here. The guy took a peek and introduced himself as Kronos. He's in charge of minding the castle. But as he took a closer look at them, he realized that Roland is the warrior, so he asked how he is still alive. He heard he was killed by the demon lord. While he was talking, Roland immediately charged to attack him with a determination to kill, but the guy swiftly dodged it. "Whoa," the guy exclaimed. "That was dangerous. I was still in the middle of talking." Sarana then attacked him from behind, but he also dodged it without getting hit. The guy mocked them with his tone as he dodged their attacks. "It's cruel to attack such a mere demon child." Roland gritted his teeth worriedly. The guy's speed is superior to Maladgo's. What's more shocking is that he's just a mere demon child. The guy told Roland he's glad to see that right arm of his. He then asked Roland if it's a woman's demonized arm. He laughed, saying he has to report it to the demon lord. Roland asked the guy who the hell he is, where Maladgo is, and why he's alive. The guy told him to stop asking shit-ass questions. Does he really think a demon would answer such things? But he decided to answer just one question for him. He whispered, telling Roland that Lord Maladgo headed for Okuna village, where the survivors are trying to rebuild. Hearing his words, Sarana and Roland became worried since Maladgo intended to destroy their hometown even more. With a plotting tone, he told Roland that there's no time for them to fight, so he won't stop him either. He can go and rescue his villagers. He could see he hadn't attacked him either. Roland thought about it. He knew he shouldn't leave the guy alone, but he didn't know how much time they'd waste fighting him. Sarana worriedly told him they have to hurry to Okuna village. Roland thought about it. If there are lives he can save by going back to Okuna village now, he can't turn his back on them. Roland looked at Kronos and told him to just wait. He won't forgive a single one of his kind. As Roland left, Kronos said to himself with a sinister smile that he won't report a thing since things seem to be getting interesting. The boy is a child of the demon tribe. Now in Okuna village, Maladgo was already massacring the citizens. As he tortured them, he asked about the whereabouts of Roland's corpse. He angrily told the guy he was about to kill that under the demon lord's 100-year rule. Being put in charge of a region is the greatest honor for demonkind. Despite that, he shouted angrily that he can't be the first to be defeated by a mere human. He then burned the guy to crisps. Now that he has returned from hell, he was determined to drag Roland back to life again, and next time he will surely win. But then, a guy pointed out, asking Maladgo if it's true that the demons have turned Roland into an abomination. Maladgo asked the guy if it's true that Roland had turned into an abomination. It does not align with the story he heard from the demon lord. The guy turned around to sneakily leave, but Maladgo stopped him and told him to tell the details. But then, Roland appeared and told him, "That's enough." Maladgo told Roland that it seems he's truly alive. Roland replied back, "That's what I wanted to say." Maladgo laughed, saying the situation is perfect. It saves him the trouble of looking for his corpse. We should fight to the death once more to settle our past. Though he wanted to fight alone with Roland, it seems there are obstacles blocking their duel. Sarana told him she won't go along with his whims. She'll fight too. Maladgo thought of an idea. He plucked some of his hair and threw it to the ground. Larvae were formed, and monsters came out of it, charging toward the village. He told Roland and Sarana that the flame soldiers he created will burn the villagers alive. If Sarana tried to run off and save them, he won't stop her. All he wants is a proper duel with Roland. As long as that happens, he won't harm the village. It will be a fair, honorable one-on-one. Sarana worriedly told Roland he'll stop them. Roland agreed, saying he will take down Maladgo while she protects everyone in the village. She should not worry. He has already defeated him once, so there's no way he'll lose again. She charged out, telling him she'll finish the battle and come right back. Now then, Maladgo told Roland. It's time to rewrite the ending of his previous defeat, but he realized that things aren't quite the same as before. He asked Roland, what about the cursed sword that once tore him apart? He'd planned to shatter it this time for sure. Roland told him enough of the talk. He should come at him already. Maladgo charged out, wanting to be the one to strike first. On the other side, Roland said to himself that when he said he beat Maladgo once, so he won't lose, he said it only to calm Sarana down. Considering he's weakened without his sword, Maladgo's dark power feels even stronger than before. Now the balance between them has completely reversed, but even so, he refused to lose. Maladgo arrived from above him, ready to kill. Roland stood his ground. He decided to treat his arm as if it were his blade, by not clashing head-on but deflecting the edge instead and evading. Even without a sword, his footwork, instincts, and battle sense remained sharp, so with his arm he thinks he can still fight. But then, Mlodgo punched his stomach with his hand, sending him flying. Roland realized that the reach of a sword and the length of an arm are worlds apart. He then landed on the roof. Mlodgo never expected Roland to soften the blow by pulling back. He then decided to launch another attack. He charged flames up in his mouth, using infernal roar, and shot it at Roland. The fire's force shattered the building, but Roland came out unscathed and landed on the ground. Roland realized that the flames born from the abyss are far more powerful than before. He'd be finished instantly if he had taken the hit head-on. With such kind of firepower, the fight isn't in his favor. Mlodgo mockingly asked Roland what's wrong. He has weakened so much. Is his arm merely for show? Roland was speechless for a moment, then told Mlodgo he'd prove he's not weak now. The two then took attack stances and charged toward each other. He dodged Mlodgo's weapon that had almost crushed his head. He then grabbed Mlodgo's hand, now wanting to unleash his power. As he grabbed it, he used Arm of Usurpation and began absorbing Mlodgo's power. Mlodgo noticed it, but he couldn't free himself. Roland then shot him away. The force was intense. Mlodgo stood up and told Roland that he was shocked when he stole his power, but that alone won't be enough to hurt him. He never thought the rematch he hoped would lift them out of despair would end up like this. He asked Roland what he is trying to accomplish by turning himself into such a grotesque thing. Roland was kind of moved by his words, then asked Mlodgo what's wrong with how he looks. Why is he calling him hideous? He has no right to mock her arm. Hearing him use the word her, Mlodgo burst out in loud laughter, saying he didn't realize until now, but it seems like the arm belongs to his lover, the one who turned into a monster. That's hilarious, he said. Roland was speechless. He thought to himself, apologizing to Felicia for letting such a scum mock him. Mlodgo was still laughing in mockery, calling Roland a pathetic, sentimental fool. Maybe he'll ask the Demon King to make Serana become his. Now, he has decided to kill Roland for real, not wanting to lose anymore. He then activated Infernal Roar and shot it at Roland. Roland stood confident, wanting to take all the power from Mlodgo. He needs to steal more from him. For a moment, no one knew what happened as the smoke filled the air. Mlodgo was also hoping he had won, but he was surprised to see that Roland survived. Roland even absorbed his flames and made them his own. Roland realized that by consuming Mlodgo's power, his right arm is now imbued with the power of fire. Mlodgo commented, telling Roland that it seems his ability is to steal the opponent's power. He never expected he'd steal his own flames. However, Mlodgo said with confidence that it seems Roland couldn't fully absorb the flame, and now he's battered. Roland voiced out confidently, saying it's just a scratch. Mlodgo laughed and told Roland he indeed has a brave face, that he'll silence that smug mouth of his right away. He then charged forward vigorously to attack Roland. Roland stood his ground and clenched his fist. Though the damage from Mlodgo isn't light either, he decided to return whatever he's given back with double the power of the stolen flames. The two collided, the impact evident. The shockwave roared through the surroundings. Then a crack appeared. The force from Roland was able to break Mlodgo's hammer, which Mlodgo never expected. Roland isn't just coating himself in fire, he's increasing his force by releasing flames from his elbow. With a grin, Mlodgo told Roland that though his hammer was shattered, he should not get ahead of himself just because he attained his flames. He then threw the broken hammer away, telling Roland that he'd make sure he clearly understands that the difference between how the two of them use their firepower is vast. He then activated the true power of his flames. The flames roared around his body, and then he charged forward with explosive strength, telling Roland that he's 1,000 years too early to challenge him when it comes to fire. And then bang again. The two clashed. This time the force was heavier, the shockwave more brutal, and the impact capable of shattering mountains. Serana had already taken down the last of Mlodgo's summoned beasts. Despite her distance, she could feel the overwhelming power as the two battled. Mlodgo called Roland a persistent fool. Roland's hand grew in size to withstand the impact from Mlodgo's punch. Mlodgo then decided to increase his firepower even more, which put Roland in a difficult spot. The firepower was so incredible that, though his arm that awakened the power of fire had gained heat resistance, his main body wouldn't be able to endure his flames for long. But Roland deemed the firepower to be exactly what he needed. It was precisely because of the high-level firepower that he had a chance of victory. Mlodgo was surprised. Roland was progressively absorbing even more of his flames. so he decided to give Roland more by raising the firepower even higher. The battle became more heated. The scorching flames capable of drying the heavens and the earth roared through the area. The two prepared for the final showdown, ready to end it all with one skill. Their fists still pressed against each other, both testing their strength. With vigor, Roland reminded Maladgo not to forget that he said he'd absorb all his powers. Maladgo couldn't believe his eyes, and then Roland's punch pierced through his stomach, creating a massive hole. Maladgo went to his knees and fell to his death. Roland withdrew his power. He looked at his hand and said to himself that the arm that stole Maladgo's flames holds tremendous power. Furthermore, he could feel the core of Maladgo's power still residing within his arm. While he probably couldn't unleash the same level of firepower as the final blow, it seemed he should be able to use the flames multiple times with it. A sharp and daring thought came to his mind. If he can use the arm to defeat executives and steal their power, he'll reach the Demon Lord someday. Until then, he told Felicia to lend him her strength. Serana then came running to him. Roland was surprised to see her and asked if she's all right and what happened to the remaining demons. She replied, saying she defeated most of them, and the rest burned out until they were no more, so she dispelled and returned. More importantly, she worriedly asked if he's okay with the wound on his body. Roland told her he's fine, it's nothing. But a subjugation squad might come upon hearing the commotion. His expression changed to one of disappointment. If he ran into them, they might attack him as a demon. Serana was surprised to see his expression. The Roland she knew never used to fight this recklessly, without thinking of his well-being. She realized he had become reckless because of his burning desire to avenge the loss of his wife, so she decided she'd have to support him. As they were about to leave, the villagers told them to wait. The villagers stood determined as they confronted Roland. One of them then asked Roland if he didn't turn into a monster. He thought Roland would become just like the others who transformed into monsters, but it seems like he's still a human after all. Roland was speechless. He wondered if he could really say he's not a monster when he has a monster arm. But then, to his surprise, Serana stepped in front of him and told them that of course Roland is a human. He's still her brother. They should have also seen how he fought Maladgo and saved everyone. He's always been the same, the villagers' greatest hero. He's Roland. The villagers realized they were wrong. They apologized and thanked him for rescuing them. One of the men then told Roland he'll report to the kingdom's suppression squad that the rumor about Roland being a monster is wrong. Roland interrupted him. He thanked the man for his goodwill but told him not to bother reporting it. With how they look now, misunderstandings are inevitable. Once doubt takes root, it's not easy to erase. Even if they say it was just a rumor, they probably won't accept it. Worse, they might think they were corrupted demons, which would be dangerous. One of the men argued, saying that's not possible. Otherwise, the whole kingdom will think he's a monster. Roland told him it's all right. More importantly, he'll leave the village for now. While he's gone, he asked if he can count on them to take over. The man replied yes, he'll handle it. Seeing that he's leaving already, they decided to go fetch bandages and salve to treat his wound. As they left, Serana told Roland they should come back to the village again, the three of them. Roland agreed. But then, something happened. Energy seeped out from Maladgo's corpse, and a voice spoke, connection made. Roland was surprised to see the person, so he and Serana both took a defensive stance. It was Kronos. He jokingly told them to stop. In his current form, he can only speak. His true body is elsewhere. Roland realized that's true. He can hear him, but he can't sense his presence. Kronos spoke out, saying he never expected Maladgo to get taken down. It's quite a loss since necromancy can only reanimate a corpse once. Well, he wasn't worried since it was nearly expired anyway. Roland asked the guy who he is. Is he one of Maladgo's men? The guy took a respectful stance and told Roland that he came to introduce himself. He is Kronos. By the Demon King's order, he has been assigned as the new executive replacing Maladgo. He apologized to Roland for calling him just a demon brat earlier. Roland was surprised to see a new officer. The guy is a high necromancer. He told Roland that he knows Roland wants to seek revenge, and maybe even wants to kill the Demon King, but Maladgo isn't an officer anymore, so the Demon King wouldn't care if he failed again. Still, after all the trouble Roland went through to win, it'd be a shame for him to get nothing. So he came as a reward to play with him. Roland asked Kronos what he meant by reward. Kronos stepped down and asked Roland if he hasn't heard about demons adoring human despair. Someone like him is just a tasty treat, so it would be wasted if he killed him straight away. And he has even brought his lover's little sister along. He's eager to see what happens when Roland loses her too. It gives him such delight. Serana shouted out worriedly, saying she can fight as well. She'll make him regret underestimating her. Kronos laughed and told her to keep that spirit up. Without hope, despair won't sprout. So he told them to put everything into defeating him, and then he vanished. Roland said to himself, "It seems like Maladgo was resurrected by Kronos, and there's a new officer now too. If one is replaced by another each time he defeats them, it'll never end." So he made up his mind to wipe out every single demon, so there won't be any more replacements. Excitedly, Serana told him that based on what Kronos said, resurrection magic actually exists in this world. That means there might be a way to revive her sister too. Roland jokingly asked her if that's all she understood from what Kronos said. He laughed, saying such behavior is like her. She told him they need to head out now that their aim is set. For now they should fix his wound. After that she'll train him. Surprised, he asked if she's going to train someone like him. She replied yes, though he might be the former sword saint. He doesn't really know martial arts, so as a brawler, she has far more experience than him. She'll be the one to toughen him up. Sometime later, as Roland was sleeping, he had the same dream as before. Nothing present, just a spotless white room. But he's always glad to see Felicia. He can't talk with her, nor can he touch her. He shyly told her that if it's a dream, he wished it gave him more freedom. He asked if she's jaded in such a room with nothing. She nodded with a smile, yes. He looked around. Then he saw it. He asked her if the fire is that of Maladgo, the power he ingested. He questioned, "Isn't the fire hot?" She smiled. Then with a slow reply she told him it's warm. He smiled and woke up. Seeing that he's awake, Serana greeted him good morning, saying she has heated up the soup, and after he has had breakfast, they'll start today's training. Sometime later, after their meal, they stood in an empty forest space. Serana told Roland they should resume yesterday's unique drill. Though he was 100 battle-tested swordsman, if he's fighting unarmed there are things he needs to modify. His footwork. Roland told her she's right, the control of the space and how he puts his weight into it. His footwork is still far from perfect. He thought about it. In the fight with Maladgo, he lost an opportunity to attack because of the gap. There's also too much force in his arms, so he's not transferring much power. Serana then told him they should evaluate his current level of competence. He should try doing it just like she taught him yesterday. Roland told her okay, then told her to watch what he can do. He took an attack stance. Then the force from his body pressed his legs downward as he clenched his fist. He punched the air. The force from that punch was capable of compressing the air within that area. Surprised, she asked him why. It wasn't this way when she taught him yesterday. She then excitedly asked if her brother is not just an expert with the sword, but also with martial arts. Roland told her it's not like that. He had time. So he practiced while he was guarding last night. There was evidence of practice on the ground. Serana looked at it, surprised to see the intensity of his practice. She then told him they should try the reverse. He should not retreat. Now that her brother fights perilously without respect for his own life, she decided to teach him the most important thing, which is how to create a gap. She told him to control the gap with hitting away. With that, dealing with several opponents would not be a challenge. He can fight without being encircled by enemies. Roland told her no, they should stop using that fighting technique. Surprised, she asked why. He replied, saying even if he replicates it, he can't catch her series of attacks. It only works because of her exceptional speed. Serana blushed, unable to handle such compliments. More importantly, he told her he has an idea to use his own characteristics even against several enemies. He then asked her if there happens to be a region of hellhounds up ahead. She asked what he means by hellhounds. Is he talking about monsters that track their prey persistently by the scent of blood? Roland replied yes, once they pick up the scent, they'll track them anywhere. When he defeated Maladgo for the first time, there was a subjugation request out at the same time. Now, seeing a stone covered with blood, she worriedly asked what he is planning to do. He told her it's fine. He then forcefully threw the stone with great force into the forest. The stone bounced on the ground, and then from within the forest, something woke. Not just one, but multiple. They charged toward the location of the blood. Serana was worried as she saw the multiple hellhounds in front of them. Roland told her that for a combat technique, what's most essential is whether it can really be used against hellhounds. So it'll be a multi-rival practical test. Now, somewhere within the forest, Kronos was walking with a little girl. She worriedly told him it's lethal to come to a place like this, but he told her with a smile that it's fine. He won't get pulled into a hero's combat. Roland said to himself that hellhounds act in packs. There are multiple leaders with different roles. They attack people in coordinated movements. If he can't beat them, hunting the demon lord will remain a pipe dream. He scratched his blood again, telling the hellhounds that he's the scent they've been tracking. One hellhound, salivating, arrived behind him, and as it acted like it wanted to attack, another one immediately popped out from behind Roland. Serana shouted at him to be careful. They're coming from behind too. Roland realized that one hellhound draws attention, while another strikes from the blind spot. They're an extremely cunning monster. Just like Serana said, he should use hit and run after each strike, then swap positions. Though it's a safe tactic to avoid getting flanked. As for him, he'll deliberately hit each blow with everything he's got, and then he'd steal the defeated enemy's energy and use it for the next strike. By doing that, he can keep attacking with high power. He'd keep on plundering their power even if his life is at risk. He can't keep retreating until his revenge is complete. Serana was surprised at how amazing Roland was. He's already starting to find his own way of fighting. Roland defeated the first hellhound that attacked him, but then ones bigger than the earlier group arrived. Their stamina and attack power are clearly higher. He activated his flames. He deemed this field training to be enough. Now he just has to kill the remaining ones and wipe out the pack. Two hellhounds charged at him, but Roland realized that the boss didn't attack him. It seems he was planning to use his men as bait and run. But Roland refused to let it go. After coming this far, there's no way he'd do that. He took out the two hellhounds, then chased after it. Somewhere around there was Kronos and that little girl. The girl, scared, told Kronos that she wanted to go home. Isn't he lost too? Kronos looked around as if waiting for something. He told her it should be fine if they got this far. But then his psychotic expression triggered, telling the little girl that of course that's a lie. There's nothing beyond here. She'll be attacked and killed by a parasitized and summoned hellhound. If she wants to blame someone, she should blame that person. He then wished her goodbye and vanished. The little girl looked around, scared, wondering where the guy went, telling him not to leave her alone. But then she heard a noise, as if something was approaching her at high speed. She closed her eyes to brace for impact, not wanting to die. But then the hellhound was cut and killed by Roland. At the same time, he saved the girl. As Roland caught the little girl, he wondered what a child was doing alone in a place like this. The girl, staring at his arm, thought it looked unusually large and strange. As Roland ran, avoiding the hellhound's attacks, he reminded himself that he had to protect the child no matter what. He couldn't let her get hurt, especially since he was the one who summoned the beasts. He told her to close her eyes, and she did, though by now, the hellhounds had surrounded him. He thought to himself that these monsters were cunning. They had run away moments ago, yet now returned after realizing he couldn't fight freely while protecting someone. One of them lunged from above, but Roland blocked the attack with his arm. Another came from behind. He knew that if he stayed defensive too long, the energy he had absorbed would soon be depleted. Just then, Serana arrived in the nick of time, calling out that he could rely on her too. Roland was surprised to see her since she had been far away, but she apologized for coming late and assured him the danger would lessen now that they were together. She asked who the child was and how he ended up with her. Roland explained that he didn't know her, but while fighting the hellhounds, their paths crossed mid-battle, and he caught her in mid-air to protect her from another attack. The little girl, teary-eyed, introduced herself as Lily. Serana smiled and said it was good that she could still say her name clearly after all that chaos. Roland told Serana he would entrust the child to her, then turned to face the remaining hellhounds. Spotting the leader from a distance, he decided not to let it escape. Although he lacked proper movement techniques, he just needed to close the gap. Increasing his mobility, he dashed toward the leader, punching through the minions that blocked his way and smashing their faces apart like overripe fruit. After a fierce fight, he turned most of the hellhounds into stone, including the ones threatening Serana and Lily. When it was over, he returned to ask Lily if she was hurt. She said she was fine. Sarana smiled and asked why she was in such a dangerous place. Lily said she followed a boy who had promised to take her home, but he disappeared midway. Roland guessed Lily must have been lured by a demon. She pointed toward her home, saying she lived in Koreki village. Hearing that, Roland grew uneasy, and Sarana noticed his expression. Because of his arm, they couldn't go there easily, but she told him that, since the village was far from town, no one would find out about him. Roland agreed and said he couldn't let Lily go home alone anyway. Raising his arm over her, he asked if she could keep it secret. Lily wondered why, saying his arm was cool. That caught Roland off guard. The girl wasn't scared at all. Instead, she compared his arm to something from Goa and thanked him for saving her. Roland sighed, thinking how she still peeked during the fight, even though he told her to close her eyes. It was probably too much for a child to witness. Later, when they reached a small house, Lily said it was her home. She knocked, and her mother opened the door. Overjoyed, Lily said she had brought guests. Her mother welcomed her back and asked who they were. Lily said they were heroes who saved her from a monster. The mother panicked at the word monster, asking if she was hurt, but Lily said she was fine thanks to them. Scolding her gently, the mother said she couldn't bear it if something had happened to her. She then thanked Roland and Sarana, asking for their names. Sarana introduced herself as a traveling martial artist. She was about to introduce Roland, but quickly lied by saying his name is Laura, and he's her companion. The woman looked confused for a moment, probably wondering why a man had a name that sounded like her aunt's best friend. Roland awkwardly explained that yes, he knew the name sounded odd. The lady smiled and brushed it off, insisting they come in for a meal to show her gratitude. After she went inside, Roland lightly smacked Sarana on the head, asking why she picked that name. She said it just came to mind since he used it often as a kid during their silly role plays. Roland grumbled, saying fine, he played the little sister back then anyway, so maybe he could stick with that role for now. Changing the topic, he pointed out that there seemed to be too few men in this village. Sarana agreed, guessing a demon might be behind it. Roland decided they should stay and defeat it. Since Kronos was stronger than Melodgo, they needed to keep training and evolving their abilities, especially Roland with his arm. Sarana agreed, saying their shared dream was to make the world peaceful and they'd see it through. Just then Lily came out, asking if they weren't coming in. They both said they were. From afar, an elderly man, so old even my grandfather would probably call him Sir, watched them quietly. Sometime later, after they entered the house and sat at the table, Lily asked Sarana if the food was good. She had personally cut the vegetables, proudly expecting compliments. Sarana, smiling, took a spoonful and said the flavor was spot on. But before anyone could bask in that small victory, Lily's mom spoke with a downcast face, apologizing that this simple meal was all she could offer. Sarana quickly waved it off, insisting the food was genuinely delicious. The woman seemed unsure but accepted it with a weary smile, explaining that ever since her husband passed away 5 years ago, life had been a constant struggle. Roland, ever the blunt one, muttered that it was sad to hear, then casually shifted gears and asked where the demons were. The woman explained that the demons lived in the old ruins on the village outskirts, the same creatures that caused her husband's death. Her daughter Lily barely remembered him at all. Concerned, Sarana asked why she hadn't left the village, but the woman explained they had nowhere else to go. The village chief once sent a request to have the demons cleared out, but small villages like theirs were always left at the bottom of the priority list. Roland thought inwardly that there were always too many cries for help in the world, and most ended up buried under paperwork. Lily's mom sighed that there were probably worse places than theirs, but complaining wouldn't change anything. Roland told her she didn't need to think like that. Suffering isn't a competition, and just because others have it worse doesn't mean she shouldn't be saved. His words caught her off guard, and tears welled in her eyes. When Roland asked her to show them where the ruins were so they could take care of the demons, she looked shocked, wondering how he planned to fight them without even carrying proper weapons. But Lily, unable to keep secrets, proudly blurted that Roland was actually really strong, then quickly shut her mouth, remembering he'd told her not to reveal that. Sarana jumped in with a small laugh, saying they could handle things just fine despite appearances. After getting the directions, the group headed toward the ruins. Roland's thoughts darkened as they walked. The world had grown too used to demons, treating them like bad weather. Something to endure, not resist. But people shouldn't have to live under that kind of fear, and that's why he needed to act. They soon reached a cave that matched the woman's description. Roland pointed toward it, asking if those were the ruins. Sarana cautioned that traps might be inside and rushing in was dangerous. Roland agreed, adventuring 101, never step into an enemy's territory blindly. Then he grinned, asking Sarana if she could lend him some gunpowder. Confused but curious, she handed him a portion. Sarana was a speed-type martial artist who used magic tools to enhance her attacks, including gloves infused with explosive energy. Roland carefully handled the powder, infused it with his own power, and combined it with his technique. Arm of Plunder and the Flames of Melago. He then hurled the resulting spell into the cave, and a few seconds later, a thunderous explosion shattered the ruins. When the smoke cleared, Roland simply said the best way to deal with a nest was to wipe out the whole thing. Sarana gave him a side-eye, saying he could have at least checked if the ruins had historical value first. Roland shrugged, saying the villagers were more important, and besides, history could survive without this one cave. But before anyone could pat themselves on the back, the ground began to rumble. Stones collided, forming a massive figure, a golem, with what looked like a tiny house perched on top, someone clearly controlling it. The voice of a demon echoed from within, mocking the humans for daring to attack. He scoffed that he had already crushed every young fighter in the village, only the weak remained. Roland stared at the creature, realizing this must be the demon who killed Lily's father. Trouble. Big, rocky trouble. He noted that demons descended from the demon lord thrived on spreading despair, commanding beasts that killed without reason. But golems were different. Lifeless constructs animated by magic, which meant he couldn't siphon their power. Before he could think of a plan, the golem swung a massive arm with a thunderous crash. Roland raised his hand to block it but was forced backward. He was shocked to find that for once his ability didn't work. The golem's power couldn't be stolen, and for Roland, that realization was as painful as the impact itself. Because nothing ruins confidence faster than meeting a monster that your powers just say nope to. Looking at Roland fighting back, the demon grew irritated, mostly because his prey wasn't acting like prey. He muttered something about how he preferred opponents who stayed still and screamed properly, but his complaint got cut short when Sarana sprinted up the golem's arm like a parkour expert on caffeine. She reached the top, ready to kick the smug demon's face in, but he casually flicked his hand and raised a stone barrier just in time. Clearly, magic reflexes beat leg day. Seeing her persistence, the demon sneered and said he'd save what amused him for later, meaning Roland, and deal with what annoyed him first, meaning Sarana. With that, he created several sharp spikes on the golem's back. They shot out like shrapnel, but Sarana twisted midair and dodged, landing back beside Roland, perfectly intact and slightly annoyed. Roland, still bracing himself against the golem's crushing force, thought inwardly that the demon was no ally but surprisingly skilled. He wondered how he was going to take this thing down. The demon didn't give him time to think. He summoned smaller golems, all armed and ready to charge. Roland told Sarana he was counting on her to handle the pattern, and she immediately recognized it. "This again?" she muttered, recalling when they fought Meladgo. Roland admitted he'd never faced a golem this huge before, so the plan was simple. He'd take the front, and she'd flank. The golem raised its enormous hand, preparing to flatten them both like bugs. Roland stood firm, his fists sparking with red lightning as he took the hit head-on. The ground shook violently, cracks spreading everywhere. While Roland held the blow, one of the smaller golems tried sneaking up from behind, but Sarana intercepted and smashed it with a single strike. Roland, meanwhile, gritted his teeth. The golem was heavy, too heavy. He couldn't break through unless he infused the energy he'd stolen earlier. Seeing danger ahead, Sarana called out, warning him to keep his guard. She reminded him of his footwork, something they had practiced before, and told him not to slack off now. Roland exhaled, grounding himself. He stomped hard, channeling his energy from his feet upward, then released a surge of power. His arm blazed with force as he shattered the golem's massive arm into pieces, the impact echoing like a thunderclap. For a moment, it worked. The golem's arms broke apart, and it staggered, seeming close to defeat. But then the rubble reformed, regenerating its limbs almost instantly. Before Roland could react, the newly grown arms clapped together. with him right in the middle. Serana screamed, calling out to her brother, horrified that the golem was still standing after such damage. The demon, laughing from his perch, mocked them and reshaped the golem into a more humanoid form. He boasted that in the hands of a true puppet master like him, Pace, as he called himself, the golem could take any shape he desired. Roland, however, wasn't finished. Crushed but not broken, he pushed himself free and leapt back, narrowly escaping. He thought grimly that the golem's regeneration and morphing speed were beyond expectation, and now it had multiple arm-like weapons, like some overzealous warlord. He knew the standard method to kill a golem was to destroy its core, but this monster likely had several, all well hidden. He had to find them all, fast. Suddenly, Serana's voice cut through the chaos. She said she'd spotted weak points, core positions, and dashed across the terrain at blinding speed. She climbed up the rocks, leaping toward the golem again. Roland yelled for her to wait, saying she couldn't destroy it alone, but Serana smirked mid-run and replied that since he was busy hunting for the cores, she'd handled the distractions. She sprinted up the golem's arm again, a blur of motion, dodging and striking as she went. The demon frowned, irritated again. Apparently this girl was starting to ruin his day. He commanded the golem to attack, and one massive swing sent Serana flying. She twisted midair but managed to recover, landing back on the creature's shoulder. Thinking fast, she struck several points across its surface, noticing faint blue veins glowing beneath the cracks. She realized those were connected to the cores. Determined, she kept attacking, saying inwardly that she wouldn't let her brother shoulder everything alone. Not after all they'd lost. Her strikes hit home, blue energy surging out like veins of light across the monster's body. Landing on the ground, she called out to Roland, telling him the locations: right shoulder, chest, and abdomen, 3 cores in total. The demon's grin finally disappeared. Furious, he yelled about how dare she discover the weakness of his masterpiece. Roland smiled faintly. Serana did well. He launched himself skyward, gathering power into his arm, the air cracking with energy. He focused everything into one devastating blow, the arm of plunder, and dove straight toward the golem to finish the fight. Roland soared into the sky, his arm charged with power. He punched straight through the golem's shoulder, carving out a hole large enough to reveal a faint blue glow beneath, the core. Finally, he had found the first one. Without hesitation, he tightened his fist and landed a devastating blow, shattering it instantly. Pace, the demon, yelled in anger as cracks began to spread across the creature's massive frame. The false core was gone, but 2 remained. The golem started to lose balance, its body breaking apart like a collapsing tower. Furious, Pace tried to regain control, shouting that Roland should just die quietly instead of being such a persistent human headache. As Roland fell from the sky, he crashed into the rocks near the golem's chest and, thinking fast, punched straight through it with tremendous force, aiming for the second core. But Pace, now panicking, used a transformation spell. The golem's form twisted violently, shrinking and reshaping into a massive stone aircraft. Clearly, the demon had switched from boss fight to emergency getaway mode. As the machine lifted, Pace muttered that he had no reason to fight these maniacs anyway. He preferred tormenting weak villagers, not clashing with random superhumans who appeared out of nowhere. Cowardice had never been so poetic. However, his brief escape plan got interrupted when he noticed Serana closing in fast from below. He sneered, certain that her attacks wouldn't pierce the golem's reinforced shell. But Serana just smirked and said inwardly that maybe not, unless she used her trump card. She overloaded the magic circuits in her gloves, packed in the rest of her gunpowder, and channeled every ounce of her strength into one final strike. Her fist ignited, glowing like a miniature sun, and the next second, a massive explosion erupted midair. The shockwave tore through the sky. The golem disintegrated into burning fragments, scattering across the landscape like shattered meteors. When the smoke cleared, Pace was already lying on the ground, his once grand escape craft now reduced to rubble. Coughing and trembling, he raised his hands, pretending to cry as Roland and Serana approached. He began to plead, saying they shouldn't kill him. Classic villain behavior. Roland calmly asked if he had kidnapped a girl recently, the one who'd been dragged into the forest. Pace denied it, saying that wasn't his style. His preferred method was, in his words, more creative, killing the men first and forcing the children to watch to make them understand despair. Even Serana looked disgusted. The demon then had the nerve to suggest that Roland should let him go, claiming he had potential. Roland's expression darkened. He thought to himself that if the demon wasn't lying, then the one who tricked Lily might have been someone else, possibly that one. The memory flickered in his mind. But before he could think further, Pace made one last desperate move, conjuring a spell and coating his hand in stone. He lunged forward, trying to crush Roland's skull. Too bad for him, Roland's fist was already faster. The arm of Plunder connected with a deafening bang, obliterating the demon's head in one clean hit. The only thing left behind was a pair of broken glasses, the final proof of a fool's arrogance. Roland exhaled slowly, thinking inwardly that unless a demon is high-ranking, it won't leave behind any lingering power like Malago's flames. Sarana called out to him, snapping him out of thought, and he told her they should head back to the village. Later, at Lily's home, Roland informed her mother that the demon in the ruins was defeated, though the one targeting Lily wasn't among them. He apologized, saying he was sorry for giving her false hope. But Lily's mother shook her head and said that avenging her husband was already enough. Gratitude softened her voice as she thanked them both. Sarana, ever the realist, pointed out that maybe the demon wasn't after Lily at all, maybe it was after them. Roland agreed and said it would be best if they left the village soon. Outsiders like them staying too long would only make the villagers uneasy. Lily didn't understand. She asked why people would be wary when they had saved everyone. Her mother gently told her to come along. It was time for farm work before sunset. Lily lowered her head and quietly agreed. Before leaving, Lily's mother told Roland and Sarana they were free to stay if they wished, or go if they must. She handed them a small basket of food, saying it wasn't much, but hoped they'd take it. Sarana smiled and thanked her before the woman left for the fields. As the quiet returned, Roland thought to himself that even after slaying a demon, they still couldn't bring smiles back to this village. But if they kept walking this path, perhaps someday they could. Sarana then mentioned their next destination, a nearby town where they could restock gunpowder, claim the reward money, and gather intel. Roland glanced out the window, calculating their route. The nearest town from here was Arlthred, the largest trade city in the Greenguard Kingdom. And somewhere within Arlthred, a man stood in a dim room, holding a wanted poster of Roland. His eyes unreadable, as if waiting for fate to make its next move. Sometime later, they returned to the restaurant to plan their next move. Sarana mentioned that Arlthred had a large guild, which meant they could instantly claim the reward for defeating the puppet monster. Roland disagreed, saying it was still too dangerous for him to go there since he was a target himself. He'd been in and out of that city too many times, and the odds of running into someone who knew him at the guild were high. If a fight broke out in a crowded place like that, escaping without collateral damage would be nearly impossible. Sarana, however, wasn't bothered. She reminded him that he once said the extermination requests in that city often got ignored, and though his monster transformation had drawn attention, it shouldn't stop them from moving forward. When Roland asked if she was sure, Sarana pointed out the obvious. They were out of money, out of gunpowder, and her gloves were basically scrap at this point. If they wanted to fix all that, Arlthred was the only logical destination. Seeing how eager she was, Roland thought to himself that maybe Sarana was trying to keep him connected to humanity in her own way. Ignoring her efforts would have just made him look ungrateful, so he agreed, noting that even if they went to the city, the world wouldn't suddenly become less dangerous. The next morning they reached the Red Kingdom's heart, Arlthred, a massive trade city bursting with life. Iron, food, medicine, weapons, and magic tools filled every corner. Traders and adventurers filled the streets, and knights guarded the walls, giving the illusion of peace in a world still crawling with demons. Roland couldn't help but think that if the Demon King ever got serious, this entire place would crumble in a day. He wondered if the city's liveliness was real hope, or just another trick in the grand scheme of things. Sarana, unfazed, said the city was as lively as ever, and as long as they didn't cause trouble, they'd stay under the radar. Then she waved him off, saying she'd collect their subjugation reward while Roland looked for an inn. As he wandered through the streets, he noticed someone tailing him, but before that, a commotion caught his attention. Two men were arguing, one beating up a merchant, yelling that the gunpowder he bought from the shop was damp and useless, claiming it nearly got him killed. The merchant, panicking, insisted he'd never sold him anything and begged him to calm down. The bully shouted that he must have forgotten and demanded proof. The merchant asked to see the gunpowder, saying he could tell if it bore their mark, but the man yelled that he'd already used it. Watching the scene, Roland couldn't help but think that for a city this loud and lively, it sure had a lot of idiots. Beneath all that noise and prosperity, the place was full of shady people. Everyone too wrapped up in their own lives to care about anyone else. Even if the city prospered, the threat of demons still lurked behind every smiling face. Roland finally stepped forward, tapped the bully on the shoulder, and told him to drop it. The guy turned, clearly not realizing who he was dealing with, and insulted him. But when Roland tightened his grip on the man's shoulder, the bully froze, his face pale as if his lungs forgot how to function. Without wasting time, the man shoved the merchant aside and backed off, promising revenge, which, honestly, sounded like a bad idea. Roland sighed, muttering to himself that he'd like to see the guy try. The merchant quickly thanked him and offered some gunpowder for free as repayment, but Roland declined and instead told him to save that courtesy for a female black market fighter if one came by. The merchant stared in disbelief, wondering what kind of decent person still existed in a place like this. As Roland walked away, he thought to himself that the guy wouldn't know which components Sarana used anyway, so it was better to leave it for her. While Roland continued down the street, still being followed, though now, whoever it was, their aura had become a bit too obvious to ignore. The person following Roland finally revealed himself. It was Charles. Roland wasn't surprised, he thought, as expected. There was no fooling Charles's eyes, even with his disguise. Seeing him again pulled Roland straight into old memories. Before losing his arm, he spent his days cutting down monsters and demons wherever they appeared. He remembered one day in particular when he faced the boss of a demon army, a towering brute that made the ground tremble. Just as he braced himself to strike, a spell flashed across the battlefield, freezing the monster in place and shattering it into rubble in an instant. When the dust cleared, Charles Glass stood there, calm as ever, like he just took a casual stroll through chaos. Back then, Charles was the eldest son of the prestigious Glass family, known for their mastery of magic. Despite his noble background, he fought on the front lines, earning the respect of both royals and commoners alike. His power was undeniable, but what made him truly different was how he cared for his comrades. Rank meant nothing to him on the battlefield. Roland remembered that during his swordsmanship days, Charles was one of the people he teamed up with most. One day, Roland had invited him to visit his home in Okinawa village, and Charles gladly accepted. When they arrived, Roland's elder sister, Felicia, welcomed them warmly, though she couldn't help but notice the unfamiliar face. When Sarana came out and recognized Charles, her surprise was obvious. Felicia introduced herself politely, and when Charles mentioned he was the eldest son of House Glass, assistant administrator of the Northern Territories, Felicia nearly dropped the tray in her hands. She tried to tidy up immediately, but Charles waved her off, saying she didn't need to bother. Sarana teased that Charles might be noble, but he had no issue drinking in taverns filled with thieves and drunks. Charles just smiled and said that when it comes to fighting demons, everyone bleeds the same, noble or not. Felicia was impressed, saying that was a wonderful way of thinking, while Sarana, ever the joker, noted that even when he was surrounded by drunks, Charles still somehow managed to look like a gentleman out of a royal painting. Roland told Felicia that Charles was a good friend, and he'd be glad if she got along with him. Charles mentioned that he had heard a lot about Felicia and had wanted to meet her for a long time. That night, the four of them shared a meal together. Roland helped with the cooking, Charles brought the wine, and for a brief moment they forgot about the war outside. The house was filled with laughter and warmth. Roland remembered thinking that this peaceful moment with family and friends was what he truly wanted to protect, not some grand prophecy or destiny. Back in the present, Roland clenched his demon arm as Charles approached. He knew that Charles must have heard about the bounty on his head. Charles admitted he had, and when he heard that Roland had turned into a monster, it shocked him. Yet as his friend, he felt it was his duty to stop him before he caused any more harm. Roland instinctively tensed, ready for a fight, but Charles simply smiled and said it wasn't that simple. He wasn't here to kill a friend without knowing the full story. Roland thought that listening to a monster's tale sounded ridiculous, but he could see that Charles hadn't changed. He still trusted him. Roland then told him everything, about Okinawa village, about Felicia's death, and how he and Sarana were now on a path to defeat the Demon King. After hearing the story, Charles finally understood. Felicia was gone. Roland blamed himself entirely, and shouted that he would make the Demon King pay no matter what. But Charles asked him quietly if vengeance was truly what Felicia would have wanted. Would she be happy seeing her brother throw away his humanity like this? Roland went silent. Maybe Charles was right. Maybe Felicia wouldn't want this, but even so, this was the path he'd chosen. As he turned to leave, Charles sighed and said he couldn't stop him. He would pretend they never met that day. Roland apologized before walking away, his thoughts heavy. Just as he disappeared into the distance, a dark cloud gathered above Charles. From it, a shadowy figure emerged, one of the Demon King's executives. The figure greeted him with an unnerving calm. Kronos stepped forward with a faint smirk, saying it was a pleasure to finally meet Charles Glass, the azure eyes of the Glass family. He said he'd been waiting for this moment. Charles, already surrounded by a burning blue aura, felt an uneasy chill. His eyes glowed brighter, his magic flaring up in preparation for battle. But Kronos stood unfazed, almost amused. He said that if Charles was truly as powerful as the rumors claimed, then he should prove it. "Come now," he said calmly. "Show me what you can do." Meanwhile, some distance away, it was already night. Roland had found an inn where his sister could rest after the long boat trip. Once inside, they settled in for the night. Serana stretched and nodded in understanding. She said that Charles was a good person. That was just the kind of man he was. Roland changed the subject, asking how things were with the guild. Serana explained that she had collected the subjugation reward and everything went smoothly. With a grin, she showed him a small bag of corn powder she bought at a discount. Roland realized it was only a family favor, but he didn't mention it and just said it was great. He then asked if there was any new information from the guild. Serana replied that there wasn't much. The subjugation requests were mostly routine. When Roland asked about Kronos or the Demon Lord, she said she hadn't heard anything. "No news is good news, right?" she added. Roland nodded, saying that at the very least Kronos was after him, and sooner or later their paths would cross. Until then, he'd keep hunting demons and absorbing their power. Serana unfolded a map and pointed to a route. She suggested they head through the Black Forest, defeat the armored demon there, and stop by Kareki village afterward, where Lily and her mother lived. Roland smiled at the idea, saying they could finally repay them with the money they earned from the last exchange. Serana was delighted. She flopped onto the bed, saying that since everything was settled, they could finally sleep in a real bed for once. No need for night watches. Roland laughed quietly and soon drifted off as well. Later that night, Serana sat up looking at her brother. Her thoughts wandered, her voice barely above a whisper. She wondered if their big sister could still hear her, if Felicia was watching over them somehow. She remembered the day she told Felicia she wanted to become an adventurer. Felicia had been worried, asking why she'd choose such a dangerous path. Serana told her she wasn't clumsy enough to trip over nothing, that she just wanted to be useful. She had always relied on her big sister and brother, and now she wanted to be strong enough to protect them in return. After thinking it over, Felicia had smiled and told her to stay by Roland's side, to support him in every battle, no matter what. That day, Serana made a promise. If Felicia ever couldn't be there, she would take her place. She would be the one Roland could turn to for rest. Since then, she had stood beside him in every fight. Looking at him now, she silently renewed that promise. If Roland ever broke under the weight of revenge, it would mean she had failed to protect him. She couldn't let that happen. When morning came, Roland woke up to the warm sunlight. Serana greeted him cheerfully. He asked if she'd slept well, and she said she slept like a dog, which earned a tired smile from him. A few hours later, they were back on the road, heading toward Kareki village. They fought through monsters and demons along the way, moving fast and steadily. Serana stretched as they walked, saying they should be getting close now. They'd cleared plenty of enemies and were making good time. Suddenly Roland stopped. He caught a faint scent in the air, one that made his expression harden. He told Serana to wait. The smell was familiar, rotten, and sweet. "The corpse garden," he muttered. Serana froze. "The plant-type monster?" she asked. Roland nodded. "Yeah. It feeds on people, turning their bodies into nutrients to bloom its flowers. If there's been no report to the guild, it must have appeared recently. We need to deal with it before anyone else gets caught." They moved toward the source, eventually spotting a massive plant-like creature hidden among the trees. Its vines glowed faintly in the dark. Serana admitted it was beautiful but unsettling. Roland said that was to be expected. Beauty often meant danger. If the plant was empty, that was fine. But if something was inside, it meant it had already eaten humans. Without hesitation, he struck the nearest tree where the vines were rooted. The impact split the bark open, and several human corpses fell out from the cocoon-like structure. Serana screamed, horrified. "Are they dead?" Roland cursed under his breath. "We're too late." Then Serana froze again, eyes wide in disbelief. Among the corpses was a familiar face. "No, that can't be," she whispered. But it was Lily's mother, her body drained, strangled by the vines. Before they could react, the entire plant trembled. Its massive flower opened, revealing rows of thorn tentacles and a gaping jaw within the petals. The corpse garden had awakened, and it was hungry. Roland yelled for Serana to get ready, saying if they didn't take down this thing fast, they'd be next. Lily's mom could wait. Survival came first. The monster responded immediately, hurling a storm of vines at them. Roland raised his arm of plunder, grabbed the incoming vines, and unleashed a wave of fire that turned the air itself molten. The plant screamed as its body burst into ash, but that was only the beginning. Dozens more of its kind sprouted around them, wrapping the area like a trap. Serana said the obvious, there were too many. But Roland told her not to be fooled. They were all just parts of the same monster. She muttered something about that not helping her much right now, and before she could move, a surge of mana shot toward her. She froze, realizing it was already too late, but Roland stepped in, taking the hit directly. The liquid splashed across his arm, sizzling like acid. It wasn't just mana. It was poison. He said he'd return the favor, mixing the toxin into his own energy. Using the arm of plunder, he threw the combined blast back at the monster. The explosion hit, shaking the ground, but the plant barely moved. The poison didn't affect it. Of course it wouldn't. It was immune to its own tricks. Roland sighed, saying fine, if poison didn't work then fire would. He slammed his hand into the ground, and waves of red flame spread like a living tide, burning through the vines in every direction. Serana realized the vines were all connected. If one burned, they all would. The air filled with the stench of charred leaves as the fire crept back to the main body. The monster panicked and launched 3 massive seed pods toward them. Roland knew they were bad news and tried to block, but several struck him, bursting with violent force. The seeds tore through the ground, cutting into his body like blades. He gritted his teeth, thinking the monster was trying to counterattack with its fruit. He muttered that he'd had enough and wouldn't be stopped by a glorified salad. Stretching out his hand, he summoned flames that burned blue and red together. The ground cracked, and the inferno swallowed the monster whole. When the smoke cleared, only ashes and silence remained. Roland staggered, catching his breath, and saw Serana kneeling beside a body. He asked if she was hurt, but she shook her head weakly. Lily's mom was gone, already dead for some time. Tears streamed down her face as she asked why this happened, why someone so kind died like that. Roland stayed quiet, his expression grim, until Serana noticed something clutched in the woman's hand. It was a letter. Roland took it, scanning the words. "Tonight, please come to the West Forest. I have something to tell you concerning Lily's safety." The signature at the bottom made him freeze. It was his name. He hadn't written it. Someone had forged it. Serana looked up in shock, asking what it meant and what happened to Lily. Roland clenched his fist, saying he didn't know, but whoever did this wouldn't be forgiven. He told Serana they needed to move, now. Lily could still be in danger. They ran until they reached Kareki village, breathless from both the pace and the dread. Serana pointed out that the village looked peaceful, maybe too peaceful. But Roland frowned. The air felt wrong. Before he could say more, an old man shouted at them. Villagers poured out, armed with farming tools like weapons. The old man, who seemed to be the village chief, accused Roland of being a pawn of the demon tribe, and demanded to know where Lily's mother was. Serana stepped forward, trying to explain, but he didn't listen. He yelled for Roland to show his right arm if he wasn't a demon. Roland froze. Only 2 people knew about his arm. The chief smirked when Roland didn't respond, saying that was all the proof they needed. Roland told him calmly they didn't want trouble and would leave soon. Serana added they just wanted to see Lily and then go, but the villagers refused. The chief barked that Lily wasn't there, and that they wouldn't shelter a child connected to demons. That was the last straw. Roland's calm cracked. He glared at the old man, his voice low but furious, asking what they had done to Lily. The old man yelled back that Roland had no right to ask questions. That was their line. He shouted that Lily tried to protect a demon like Roland, so she clearly wasn't in her right mind. Her mother was missing, and now she was defending a monster. That was why they did what they had to do. Serana tried to calm them down, begging them to wait and listen. She said they didn't harm Lily's mother, and no one had brainwashed Lily. She asked where they even got the idea that her brother was a demon. The old man glared, saying she shouldn't pretend to be innocent. He accused her of being brainwashed too, pointing at Roland's arm while yelling about his evil deeds. He said the ice mage had exposed everything. Roland's demonic right arm, the murder of his sister, and even his lover. Hearing that name made Roland freeze. There was only one person known as the ice mage, Charles. It couldn't be, could it? The old man kept ranting, saying that according to the mage, Roland was the one who took Lily's mother. She'd received a letter from him before she disappeared. He admitted he was suspicious back then but hadn't acted, and now it was too late. He ordered his right-hand man to do it. The man nodded and pulled out an item the ice mage had given them, saying they were told to use it if Roland ever appeared. He shot it into the air, and the flare burst open, lighting the sky like daylight. The old man smirked, saying the Kingdom Knights would arrive soon, and even if Roland killed them all, he wouldn't escape. Serana felt panic rise but forced it down. This wasn't the time. She told Roland to run while she handled things. Roland understood and took off, shouting that he was counting on her. The villagers saw him flee, but the old man stopped them, saying there was no need to chase. The knights would handle it. Instead, he told them to focus on breaking the girl's brainwashing. They all closed in around Serana. Meanwhile, several royal knights were already on their way. The captain ordered his men to keep moving, not to rest until they reached Koreki. Roland, hiding behind a tree, saw them pass. He sighed quietly. The Kingdom Knights were fast, expected, but still annoying. They weren't the real enemy. Someone had set him up, and there was no way Charles would betray him. He decided he needed to find Charles and confirm everything himself. Somewhere else, Serana had already been captured. She didn't fight back, probably because she was planning to find Lily. When they brought her to the cave, she noticed how huge it was, with branching tunnels and a damp chill in the air. The old man ordered his men to wash her with the spring, before putting her in a cage. They dragged her to a pool, tied her up, and dumped a bucket of freezing water on her. Serana gritted her teeth, soaked and furious. The man filled another bucket, saying the water was cold enough to wake her up, and poured it again. He crouched beside her, asking if she'd changed her mind now. Serana glared and said her brother wasn't a monster. The man scowled and told his assistant to throw her in the cage. When the assistant asked what if her brainwashing didn't break, the old man sighed like it was a pity. Food was short, he said. If Lily and Serana didn't come to their senses, they'd have to be dealt with. They locked Serana in the cage and left, telling her to cool off and regain her sanity. The moment their footsteps faded, Serana sat still, dripping water and anger. Then, a faint voice called her name. Big sister. Serana turned, wide-eyed. It was Lily. Relief hit her all at once. She smiled through exhaustion, saying she knew she'd find her, and that she came to save her. Serana asked Lily if she was hurt, and whether she was okay. Lily nodded, saying she was fine, just that the place was dark and a bit scary. Serana sighed in relief, thanking the heavens she was safe, then said she'd get her out right away. But before she could move, Lily asked a question that froze Serana. Had she seen her mom? Serana hesitated, not knowing how to answer. Lily continued, saying everyone kept telling her that she and her big brother were bad people, and that they did something to her mom. Serana quickly denied it, and told her that she and her brother were on her side and would never harm her. Hearing that, Lily brightened up, saying she knew it all along. She explained that a letter had arrived one day from someone she didn't know. When her mom read it, Lily had asked if it was from Serana or Roland, but her mom said no, it was from someone else. Before her mom could leave for wherever that letter led, she hugged Lily tightly, told her to be a good girl, and never go out with strangers. That was the last time Lily saw her. As Serana pieced everything together, she realized Lily's mother must have sensed danger, and went alone to protect her daughter. Lily then asked if now that she and Serana had met again, she would soon see her mom too. Serana smiled and said of course, once they escaped she'd see her again. But deep down Serana knew the truth. Lily's mother was long gone, and telling her now would break her. The only thing that mattered was getting out alive. Serana asked how often the villagers came to check on Lily. Lily said about 3 times a day when they brought food. Serana nodded, saying that was enough time to make a move before their next visit. Lily nervously asked how they'd escape, and Serana revealed a hidden knife she had stashed away. She said she'd cut the ropes around her wrists first, then use her hairpin, which doubled as a lockpick. Lily was amazed and whispered that her big sister Serana was incredible. Serana smirked slightly and said they should get started right away, but then she froze. A figure was approaching. She quickly told Lily to stay quiet. It was the old man, accompanied by the Kingdom Knight captain, leading others into the prison. Serana's heart dropped. She didn't expect the knights to arrive so fast. The captain eyed both girls, muttering that these must be the ones who followed the demon Roland. He asked the old man if the brainwashing was breaking. The old man said no, they'd been cooling their heads with cold water. The captain blinked, then scoffed, saying, "Cold water? That's lukewarm." He wasn't even talking about the temperature. He was mocking the old man's half-hearted effort, patting him on the shoulder, like a disappointed teacher grading a lazy student. He said that when dealing with supposed demon followers, you had to be thorough. Sarana, still bound, felt sweat trickle down her neck. Escaping just became 10 times harder. Meanwhile, Roland was on the move, heading toward one place he knew Charles would be. He thought back to their old party days. Whenever they got separated, they'd always regroup where the moon could be seen clearly. It was their meeting point, and sure enough, when he arrived, Charles was there. Roland felt a wave of relief and tried to explain that someone was framing them. He said they should work together to find whoever was behind this. But before he could finish, Charles attacked. Fast, sharp, no hesitation. His aura burst with killing intent, binding Roland in place. Roland stared, speechless. Charles smirked and asked, almost playfully, why he never considered that maybe the betrayal was real, and that he truly hated him this much.